The research station hummed with quiet activity as Hana Kim adjusted her microscope, carefully examining soil samples from the newly discovered exoplanet. Soft blue light from the monitoring screens cast gentle shadows across her workspace. Outside, the reinforced windows, twin suns cast a warm orange glow across the rocky landscape of Epsilon 7, humanity's most distant colonial outpost. She didn't hear them approach at first. The Kraxar ships were designed for absolute silence, their advanced stealth technology rendering them invisible to most tracking systems. It wasn't until the first energy pulse hit the station's outer shield that Hana realized something was wrong. Alarms blared. Red emergency lights flickered across the corridors. Hana's colleagues began moving quickly, their trained responses kicking in. Protocol demanded immediate evacuation, but something held her in place. Years of scientific curiosity battled with rising panic. The wall beside her simply dissolved. Not exploded, not cracked, but dissolved into a fine metallic dust that drifted like smoke. Through the opening stepped the Kraxar warriors. They were massive, easily 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like polished granite and eyes that reflected no emotion. Mechanical implants broke the surface of their bodies, turning them into something between organic beings and living machines. Human specimen. The lead warrior spoke, its voice a mechanical translation that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. You are required. Hana knew running was futile. The research station's security systems were already offline. Her communication device had been crushed during the initial breach. She was alone, surrounded with no way to call for help. The Kraxar moved with inhuman precision. One moment she was standing by her research table. The next she was lifted. Not roughly, but with a calculated efficiency that suggested she was nothing more than a specimen to be collected. Her research samples, her personal belongings, her entire life's work, all were secondary to whatever purpose they had in mind. As they transported her through the station, Hana noticed something strange. The Kraxar weren't destroying everything. They were selective, scanning equipment, downloading data, collecting specific technological artifacts. This wasn't a random attack. This was a carefully planned extraction. The ship that awaited her was unlike anything humans had ever designed. Smooth surfaces that seemed to shift and change, corridors that appeared to breathe, technology so advanced it bordered on biological. Hana was placed in a containment chamber, not a prison cell but a scientific observation area. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time felt different here. The Kraxar monitored her constantly, running tests, scanning her body, analyzing her genetic makeup. They spoke in their clicking, mechanical language, discussing her as if she were a research subject rather than a sentient being. What they didn't know was that every moment Hana was observing them too. Her scientific mind was recording everything, their technology, their movements, their communication patterns. If she survived this, humanity would learn from her experience. But survival seemed uncertain. The Kraxar were not known for mercy. Their reputation across explored space was one of cold, calculated expansion. Entire civilizations had been absorbed or eliminated by their relentless drive for technological and territorial conquest. Hana thought of her family back on Earth. Her parents in Seoul, her younger brother studying quantum engineering. Would they know what happened to her? Would anyone even know she was gone? The ship continued its journey through the vast, dark corridors of space. Outside the observation window, stars streaked by like long lines of white light. Hana Kim, AE, simple researcher who had dreamed of understanding alien ecosystems, was now herself an alien specimen, taken far from home, her fate entirely in the hands of a species that viewed her with complete detachment. Little did the Kraxar know that this single act of kidnapping would trigger a response that would forever change the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. The communication came through at 0300 hours, a burst of encrypted data that triggered immediate alerts across Earth's defense networks. In the central command center of the United Global Defense Ministry, screens flickered to life, displaying fragmented information about the Epsilon 7 research station's disappearance. June Park, lead strategic analyst, traced the signal's origin with practiced fingers. His eyes narrowed as the details became clear. Another human researcher, Hana Kim, had been taken by the Kraxar. This wasn't the first incident, but something felt different this time. The room filled quickly. Senior military officials, political, leaders, and intelligence experts gathered around the holographic display. No one spoke. The silence was heavy with understanding. The Kraxar had crossed a line. Admiral Kim stepped forward, her uniform crisp, her expression steel. "We're beyond diplomacy," she said simply. The room nodded in collective agreement. Years of careful negotiations, peaceful communications, and diplomatic restraint were about to end. In orbital defense stations circling Earth, massive weapon systems began powering up. These weren't typical military installations. They were technological marvels that represented humanity's most advanced defensive capabilities. Quantum-linked weapon platforms, AI-driven targeting systems, and experimental energy weapons that most of the galaxy had never seen. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, secret research facilities hummed with activity. Scientists and military, engineers who had been preparing for this moment began implementing protocols that had been decades in the making. The kidnapping wasn't just an attack on one researcher. It was a challenge to humanity's entire existence. Global communication networks lit up, not with panic but with a cold, calculated response. Every major government, every military installation, every research center synchronized their efforts. The human response would be unified, precise, and devastating. Satellite tracking systems began mapping Kraxar movement patterns. Advanced quantum computers processed millions of potential scenarios every second. The strategy was already taking shape, not just a rescue mission, but a comprehensive demonstration of human capability. In Beijing, Tokyo, New Delhi, London, and Washington, emergency meetings condensed weeks of potential diplomatic responses into hours of decision-making. The message was clear: attacking a human citizen would result in total consequences. June Park worked silently, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. He pulled up Hana Kim's complete profile, her research history, her family background, her psychological evaluation. She wasn't just a number. She was a representation of humanity's scientific future. Military AI systems began calculating potential attack vectors. These weren't simple war machines, but complex strategic networks that could predict and counter potential Kraxar defensive maneuvers with terrifying precision. Each potential path was analyzed, each potential consequence measured. The orbital defense platforms started charging. Energy levels that could destroy entire planetary systems began building. This wasn't about revenge. This was about sending a message that would echo through the galaxy. "Prepare full response protocols," Admiral Kim announced. Her voice was calm, almost quiet, but in that quietness was a promise. Humanity would not be victims. Communication channels to deep space listening posts activated. Stealth reconnaissance drones, which had been waiting in the shadows of various star systems, began moving into position. The Kraxar would soon understand that taking one human meant confronting an entire species. In research laboratories, experimental weapon systems that had been theoretical for decades suddenly became practical. Quantum entanglement weapons, molecular disassembly technologies, energy systems that could collapse entire planetary cores, all were now on the table. June Park looked up from his console, meeting Admiral Kim's gaze. No words were needed. The plan was set. The response was coming. The galaxy was about to learn a fundamental truth about humanity. They might appear peaceful, they might seem slow to anger, but when pushed, they would respond with a fury that would rewrite the understanding of interstellar conflict. The Kraxar had made a mistake, and now they would understand the full meaning of that error. Humanity was awakening, and nothing would stop its response. The first wave of attacks came without warning. Quantum-guided missiles erupted from Earth's orbital platforms, moving faster than light, striking with pinpoint accuracy across multiple Kraxar worlds. June Park watched the holographic displays, his fingers tracing the trajectory of each strike. These weren't random attacks. Every single missile carried a specific purpose, targeting critical infrastructure with surgical precision. The Kraxar communication networks collapsed first. Massive energy pulses disabled their primary relay stations, cutting their planetary systems into isolated pockets. No warning, no communication, just sudden, complete darkness. Industrial complexes on Kraxar colony worlds vanished in moments. Massive production facilities that had taken centuries to build simply disappeared. Not destroyed, but completely erased from existence. Advanced quantum weapons turned entire manufacturing centers into atomic dust. Military installations went dark one by one. The Kraxar defense systems, once considered invincible, proved helpless against human technology. Each strike was calculated, each movement predicted by AI systems that could think faster than entire alien command structures. Research data suggested the Kraxar had never faced a coordinated attack of this magnitude. They understood technological warfare, but humanity brought something different. A cold, precise intelligence that transformed warfare into a mathematical equation. Energy weapons from orbital platforms began targeting planetary power grids. Entire star systems watched their technological infrastructure collapse in minutes. The attacks were so precise that organic life was mostly untouched. This was a message about technological capability, not genocide. Stealth ships moved through Kraxar space like ghosts. Each vessel carried experimental weapons that could disable entire planetary defense networks in seconds. No traditional weapons, just pure technological disruption. The human strategy was clear: demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority without unnecessary destruction of life. Each strike was a calculated lesson, a message written in the language of advanced science. Quantum communication networks allowed Earth's military to coordinate attacks with millisecond precision. Where the Kraxar saw chaos, human commanders saw a perfectly choreographed dance of technological destruction. Deep space listening posts tracked every movement. Advanced AI systems predicted Kraxar responses before their commanders could even consider a counterattack. It was like playing chess against an opponent who could see every possible move simultaneously. Power stations collapsed. Communication networks disintegrated. Transportation systems became useless networks of dead technology. The Kraxar watched, in horror, as their technological achievements were systematically dismantled. Military analysts on Earth monitored the assault with clinical detachment. This wasn't about revenge. This was about sending a clear, unambiguous message about humanity's technological capabilities. Each destroyed facility carried a hidden message. The quantum encrypted signals left behind spoke volumes. Touch one human, and your entire technological civilization becomes vulnerable. Planetary shields that had protected Kraxar worlds for millennia proved useless against human strategic planning. Advanced quantum penetration technologies simply ignored traditional defensive mechanisms. June Park continued monitoring, his expression unchanged. Years of preparation, decades of secret technological development, were now being demonstrated to the entire galaxy. The assault continued. Not with anger, not with emotion, but with a cold, calculated precision that suggested this was nothing more than a technical demonstration. By the time the first wave completed, the Kraxar understood a fundamental truth. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered or ignored. They were a technological force that could dismantle entire civilizations with mathematical precision. No unnecessary lives were lost. No random destruction occurred. Each strike was a surgical intervention, a message written in the language of advanced technology. The galaxy watched. The Kraxar trembled. And humanity had only just begun to show its true potential. The strategic assault was complete. The message was sent, loud and clear. The stealth ship moved like a shadow through broken Kraxar space. Hyun Lee, lead extraction specialist, watched the holographic displays with intense concentration. Their mission was simple: retrieve Hana, Kim, from the most secure detention complex in Kraxar territory. Advanced cloaking technologies made their approach invisible. Standard Kraxar detection systems were now useless, disabled by the previous strategic assault. Each movement was calculated, each second planned with mathematical precision. Inside the ship, a team of 6 special operation experts prepared. They weren't traditional soldiers. They were technological specialists, each with unique skills designed for this specific mission. Quantum communication devices, advanced infiltration equipment, and experimental molecular disruption tools lined their tactical gear. The Kraxar detention complex appeared on their screens, a massive structure floating near a dying star. Once considered impenetrable, it now looked like a fragile shell after humanity's previous technological demonstration. Hyun Lee's fingers moved across the control interface. Quantum encryption codes began breaking through security systems. Layers of complex protection fell apart like paper in water. The Kraxar had built their systems believing them unbreakable. Humanity proved otherwise. Molecular disruption charges, prepared to create entry points. These weren't explosives in traditional sense. They were precise technological tools that could create microscopic passages through the most advanced materials. The first breach happened silently. No alarms, no warnings. Just a sudden, calculated infiltration that the Kraxar defense systems couldn't comprehend. Advanced AI systems accompanying the team predicted and neutralized potential resistance before it could form. Hana Kim sat in her containment area looking more curious than frightened. Years of scientific training had prepared her for unexpected situations. When the wall beside her simply dissolved, she didn't panic. She observed. The rescue team moved with mechanical precision. One moment the corridor was empty, the next Hana was being carefully extracted. No unnecessary violence, no random destruction. Just a precise retrieval operation. Kraxar security systems tried to respond. Automated defense mechanisms activated, but they were fighting against technology so advanced, their responses seemed like children playing with outdated toys. As they moved through the complex, Hana noticed something interesting. The human team wasn't just rescuing her. They were systematically collecting data. Every system they passed, every technological artifact was being scanned and recorded. The extraction took less than 12 minutes. By the time Kraxar Command understood what was happening, the human team was already leaving the star system. Behind them, entire sections of the detention complex began to experience systematic technological failure. Not destruction. Just complete calculated shutdown. Hana looked at Hyun Lee, her scientific mind processing everything. "Impressive operational strategy," she said simply. Lee allowed himself a small smile. A compliment from a researcher was high praise indeed. The ship moved away from the detention complex, quantum drives pushing them faster than light. Planetary systems that had been part of Kraxar territory now looked like technological graveyards, not from destruction, but from calculated dismantling. Communication. Channels back to Earth opened. Preliminary mission data began streaming, not just about Hana's rescue, but comprehensive intelligence about Kraxar technological infrastructure. As they traveled, the team began initial medical checks on Hana. She was healthy, curious, and more interested in the technological aspects of her rescue than any potential trauma. Hyun Lee reviewed mission parameters. The rescue was complete. The message was sent. Humanity had demonstrated that no place was beyond their reach. No technology was unbreakable. The ship continued its journey, carrying with it a simple, clear message to the entire galaxy. Humanity protects its own, with technology, with precision, without mercy. Another star system passed by. Another reminder that the Kraxar had made a fundamental mistake. They touched one human, and now they would understand the consequences. The remaining Kraxar leadership gathered in their central command chamber, surrounded by the remnants of their once powerful technological infrastructure. Holographic displays showed the systematic destruction of their civilization, not by brute force but by calculated, precise technological intervention. Senior commanders watched in silent horror. Entire planetary systems had been reduced to technological shells. Not destroyed, but carefully dismantled. Every critical infrastructure, every advanced system, now lay dormant. Hana Kim stood on the bridge of the human recovery vessel, her scientific mind processing the massive transformation. She wasn't celebrating. She was analyzing. Each destroyed system represented a technological puzzle, a demonstration of human capability. Quantum communication channels opened. A simple message began transmitting across all Kraxar communication networks. No threats, no emotional language, just a clinical, precise statement of facts. Harm one human. Lose everything. The message repeated, in multiple languages. With perfect translation, each repetition carried the weight of the technological demonstration they had just witnessed. Kraxar leadership tried to understand. Their civilization, built on technological superiority and calculated expansion, had been systematically neutralized in weeks, not through traditional warfare, but through a level of technological intervention they couldn't comprehend. Earth's defense systems continued monitoring, not with anger, not with emotion, just with cold, calculated observation. The quantum transmission carried more than words. It carried data. Comprehensive information about their technological vulnerabilities. A detailed map of every system that had been compromised. A clinical breakdown of their defensive weaknesses. Hyun-Lee reviewed the final mission reports. Every piece of data collected during the rescue and assault was being processed, not for revenge, but for understanding. Hana noticed something interesting. The human response wasn't about destruction. It was about demonstration, a clear message, about technological capability, about protection, about boundaries. Kraxar communication networks continued receiving the transmission. Each repetition was a reminder, a warning, a clear statement of human capability. Harm one human. Lose everything. The message was simple. The consequences were complex. Planetary systems that once represented Kraxar technological might now looked like silent museums. Advanced infrastructure disabled not through violence but through precise technological intervention. Earth's defense analysts continued monitoring. Each system failure, each communication disruption was being carefully recorded, not as an act of war, but as a scientific observation. The Kraxar leadership understood now. This wasn't about Hana Kim specifically. This was about a principle, about showing the galaxy that humanity would protect its own, with technology, with precision, without emotion. Hana looked at the holographic displays, her scientific mind processing the massive transformation. She wasn't afraid. She was curious. Each disabled system represented a technological achievement. Hyun-Lee approached her, reviewing mission data. Interesting outcome, he said simply. Hana nodded. For a researcher, this was more than a rescue. This was a massive technological demonstration. The quantum transmission continued, repeating its message across multiple communication bands. Simple, clear, precise. Harm one human. Lose everything. No additional explanation was needed. The technological demonstration had spoken volumes. The galaxy watched. The Kraxar trembled. Humanity had sent its message clearly, precisely. Without room for misunderstanding, one human was not to be touched, ever.